right, well, welcome to the work session for Greeley Evans School District 6. It is Monday, the 23rd of January, 2023. It's 4:01, and we're beginning our work session with a call to order. And Ms. Lemon? Sorry, I was about to call on Dr. Campos-Spitzy. Ms. Lemon, will you call us or give us a roll call, please?
Director Bentley.
Present.
Director Campos-Spitzy.
Present.
Director Mash.
Present.
Director Matthews.
Present.
Director Norwood. Director Pappas.
Present.
Director Sullivan. 5 board members present.
Thank you, Ms. Lemon. First up, we have our calendar review and community engagement. And so you have a calendar before you. If you would, please just take a look at that. And that covers everything for January through April. And just want you to look at that and see if there's anything that is not on there that needs to be on there, something maybe that you're aware of that we as a board might be interested in, or if you see anything that's wrong.
We could add the Greeley Central musical, Grease, is March 9th through the 11th.
Greeley musical, or Greeley Central musical, March 9th through 11th. And I just want to draw your attention to 2 other things this week. We have the Success in 6 awards. That is on Thursday. And then we also have our board work session, our all-day work session. Notice that both of those are going to be in Ames. And so Thursday night we'll be at Ames, and then Friday morning at 8 o'clock we'll be back at Ames. So, also GAP winter graduation. And Ms. Lemon, do we, just real quickly, I know we don't want to spend a lot of time on calendar, but do we have people for the GAP graduation? Okay.
Yes, we do. Yep.
Okay.
Director Norwood will accept the class, and I'd just like to bring to your attention that Director Sullivan has just joined us via Zoom.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Sullivan. That is our calendar review and community engagement. Any other questions or comments on that? All right. Well, we are to our Council of Student Representatives feedback on student calendar. So, Dr. Pilch, I'll give it to you to introduce our Council of Student Representatives.
Yeah, I think I also want to introduce Christina Crane, who's actually going to give you an overview of some calendar proposals that she'll talk to you about the team that has been working on this. And then the students, we'd like you to come join us up here at the table, so let's find space for you. We want you to provide us feedback on what you hear from this presentation. So we've got some seats over here that you can join. I think all 4 of you probably can go there. Okay. Or somebody can go up there by Mr. Matthews. You just want to make sure that when you do speak here in a little bit that you have a microphone to speak into when you do speak. And would each of you like to introduce yourselves now? Tommy, you want to start?
Hi, my name is Tommy, and I'm a senior at Greeley Central High School.
My name is Joey, and I'm a senior at Greeley West High School.
I'm Reagan Medelis. I am a junior at Greeley Central.
My name is Richard Alania, and I am a junior at Union Conley Preparatory School.
Thank you, guys. And Ms. Crane, I'm going to let you just kick it off here and share with us what you all have been up to.
All right. So I wanted to kind of set the stage for you all with this, that this is based off of the work of a group of staff that we have brought together that actually came out of a negotiations subgroup. So about 5 years ago, one of the committees that was formed was called Time and Learning, and this is a subgroup of that committee. So you can see the folks here represented on the screen that have been a part of that. These folks are representatives from both the school and district. They are from elementary, middle, K-8, and high schools, as well as we have a parent representative on the team, we have a support staff representative on the team, and we have athletics representative as well. So we have tried to really kind of get a whole cross-section of our district to do this work. And the work really is looking at what options we could use in the future for a district calendar. So there are 4 proposals here that we're going to bring to you tonight. None of them are proposals for this coming year necessarily. These are just some research that we have done as a committee to look at what the calendar could look like in the future. So I wanted to bring you here to this slide to kind of share what our purpose is in doing this. We are really looking both at our educators and staff as well as our students and learners, and creating a calendar in, like I said, a variety of ways that really looks at magnifying the presence. So educators and students together throughout the course of the year, as well as increasing our student success and honoring the well-being of our staff and students both. And I will just preface this by saying we are starting out talking about educators here, but I hope you recognize, as do we, that everything we do is really based on what is best for students. And so we're looking here at educator stress and how that is affected nationwide. The key point here on this is that there are surveys that have been done, and if you look at those surveys, teachers are actually reporting higher stress than other support fields, even nurses and doctors, which obviously is a high stress position. And so this is just kind of to put that into perspective. And so some of the things we're seeing are burnout and disengagement, as well as low retention. And so we know that when our educators struggle, our students are going to struggle. And so again, our student needs underlie all of this, but this is just one way that we can look at it. And so we are looking at one option. This is not the only option, but this is one way that we can make a change potentially at a systemic level to affect both our students and our staff, and ideally lessen some of that stress that is on them. So we are presenting a few different options here that would allow for some more balance, as well as making sure that we have educators present as much of the time as possible. So when our teachers are in front of our students, those relationships are strong, and then the learning is stronger as well. One thing we do know, we have done a lot of research as a team as we've looked at the different calendar options. One thing that is very clear in the research is that with more time on task for our students, those learning opportunities are going to increase student achievement. So the more time our students are with our educators, the better their achievement will be. And that is clear across the research. There is some research that is a little bit conflicting around other things. This is one thing that is very clear in the research, that if our students are with our teachers and our staff, and having that increased time learning, their achievement does improve. So we know that when our educators kind of flip it from before, educator stress equals student stress, we know that when our educators are engaged, our student achievement goes up because our students are also engaged. And so this is some research that we found as well from Penn State. So I'm going to dive very quickly into our 4 calendar options.
Mrs. Crane, if I may.
Yeah.
So we're not asking you, and won't be asking you guys or you all, to pick a calendar. What we're really doing tonight is sharing the work with you that this team has done, and then we're looking for your feedback so that they can go back and shift their work, change their work, clean up their work. So this is not actually calendar proposal time yet. And we're hearing from several groups. We heard from the District Accountability Committee last week. I'll hear from the Teachers Accountability this week. Ms. Snyder has been gathering input from her executive committee, and she serves on the committee. So we're gathering different forms of feedback. This is an opportunity for us to hear some student voice on this and to hear your reactions to it. So you all know that on Friday at our all-day work session, we will come back to this and visit this. So at that meeting, the board will have a significant amount of opportunity to give additional feedback. So tonight was really intended for you all to hear from the students.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just, I didn't know if it's possible to share the slides with Mrs. Sullivan.
She can see them, right?
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
We just can't see her,
Okay.
but she can see all of
Gotcha.
us.
I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if she was just voting.
Yes, I can see everything.
Okay, great.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Our first option that I wanted to jump into very quickly is a traditional calendar. So this is something you are all going to be very familiar with. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because this does not have any real significant changes from the calendar that we have had the last 2 years. Some of the basics that we are going to look at first, our days per quarter are pretty well aligned with how they have been in the past. You may notice that fourth quarter has more days than others. We also have state assessments in fourth quarter, and so that helps balance some of those days there. Our educator contract days in this calendar are the same. Student contact days are the same as well, so we're not changing any of that. And we do have a full 2-week winter break with weekends on either side. So this maintains all of that. One shift that you'll see, actually, maybe, it's kind of small, but you could see here on the actual layout of the calendar is instead of winter break being the last 2 weeks in December, like it has been the last couple years, it's actually the last week in December and the first week in January. And that really is just because of how the days fall as the calendar continues to progress. So this year is slightly different in that way. But you'll see kind of the main points here is that we will be bringing our new educators back on August 2nd. Returning teachers come back August 7th, and the first day for students would be August 14th. So that is very similar to how it has been the last couple years. We still have the full week in November for Thanksgiving. Like I said, we have the full 2 weeks at winter break. And then again, spring break is in March, and it does align with both Ames and UNC as it has the last handful of years. And the last day for students would be May 23rd in this calendar. So they finish the week before Memorial Day. We do have some limitations with this calendar. As we've talked to some of our community, these have come out. We do know that with a traditional calendar comes a traditional long summer, and with that, the research is clear that there is some learning loss that occurs over that extended summer break. We do have built into this current calendar a transition day, we're calling it, between quarters. So that is a day where we do not have students, but staff are there, and that allows for staff to kind of wrap up the previous quarter and prepare for the upcoming quarter. Our traditional calendar does allow for that quarter breaks. It does not have a transition day after the trimesters, and we do have some of our K-8 schools that are on a trimester schedule, so this calendar lacks that day. And we do have 1 day of break in fourth quarter. Like I said, we have state assessments in fourth quarter, so there's less flexibility with that. So there is one professional development, or I'm sorry, 1 day off for staff and for students in fourth quarter, but that's limited to 1 day. There are some benefits, though, to this calendar. Again, like I've mentioned, it is consistent. So this would not be a big transition for our students and families or our staff. It does keep the start date for our educators in August. If we were to move into July, which you would see in some of the later calendars, there's some additional cost to the district for benefits. And so this avoids that. We do, like I mentioned, have that transition day after each quarter, so before and after the quarter ends. We were able to add 1 extra day in October. We've had a request from educators. October is traditionally a pretty hard month in the schools, and so we have added an additional day off in October. And we also have a little bit of flexibility to add a professional development day in January if we needed to do that. It does lengthen fourth quarter by a couple days. Like I mentioned earlier, those days in fourth quarter are used for state assessments. And so having a couple extra instructional days is a benefit here. And it does, with the extended summer, we talked a little bit about how that could be a limitation. It can also be a benefit. And so this extended summer option does provide for summer learning as well as summer employment for both our students and our staff, should they choose to do that. So next, like I said, we're moving fast. We're going to jump into what we're calling our extended access calendar. This one, long story short, this one kind of looks at readjusting what the school year is, and it would be 4 to 5 weeks of instruction with a week break. And then you'd have another 4 to 5 weeks of instruction with a week break. So let me dive into what that looks like. This does provide a little bit of a visual for you on the right-hand side. The top one is our traditional calendar where you see the longer summer break in blue there, and then bigger chunks of learning time. The extended calendar kind of spreads that out a little bit, so you see that it's a little bit more evenly spaced there. So like I said, you've got 4 to 5 weeks of instruction followed by a 1 week break. Now that week break could look different ways. That could just be a week that staff and students are off, and so you've got that rejuvenation listed up there, but it also provides an opportunity for some enrichment. So we could offer some additional learning opportunities during those weeks in between, and that would allow our educators who choose to work those weeks to make a little bit of additional money. Here's what that looks like, big picture, if you're looking at that calendar. So that does mean that our new teachers would start July 14th. That is quite a bit earlier start to the year. Our returning educators would begin on July 24th, and our students' first day of school would be July 31st in this option. And then you'd see the 4 to 5 weeks of instruction with that first week break being there in September, another 4 to 5 weeks of instruction, a break in October. We would still have the week in November off for Thanksgiving. This also provides a 2-week break for winter break as well. And then there's another break in February. Our spring break is at a different time. That would bump it down to later in March. And then we'd have a longer bit of instruction there in April for state assessments and things. And then the final day of school for students would be June 6th. So students would start July 1st and go to June 6th in this calendar. It does...
July 31st.
July 31st, what did I say? Anyway, July 31st to June 6th. It does, like I said, start the school year a little bit earlier and bump it a little bit later to accommodate those breaks throughout the year. But again, it's the same number of instructional days. So there are some limitations with this calendar. There is some research out there that shows that doing that, making that change, can be somewhat disruptive for families that are not used to that type of a calendar. And we would need to make sure that that's not going to be too disruptive in our community. So this is where we talked about potentially putting out a survey to our educators and to our families to make sure that people would be interested in accessing those learning options during the week breaks in between the instructional chunks. There would be some additional cost to the district that we would need to do some more research to figure out exactly what that would look like if we were moving to a model like this. But there are some benefits as well. It really does provide some flexibility. If we look for both educators and students, there's some availability throughout the year for travel, for rejuvenation, those kinds of things like we talked about, as well as provides a little bit healthier work-life balance. It also could affect and improve academic achievement for our students, because we know that more time with our students improves achievement. So if we have students accessing those extended learning opportunities during the breaks, we would have that option here. And with a shorter summer break, we would improve that retention of learning over that summertime. Jumping into our third calendar option, this is the balanced calendar that we are calling. This is something that we do see in there are a couple other districts in Colorado that are doing something like this. It is similar to the last one we looked at in that it kind of extends the year a little bit by starting a little bit earlier and ending a little bit later. It's just not quite as drastic. And the main point in this is that it adds a week-long break in October. So it would add in a fall break in addition to the week at Thanksgiving and the 2 weeks at Christmas. It also adds a few extra days spaced throughout. So at the beginning of the year, you can see here that our new educators begin on July 27th, and our returning educators start on August 2nd. So it does push the start date a little bit earlier, like I mentioned. Our first date for students would be August 8th, so that's about a week earlier than it has been in previous years. And then as you see there in October, there is that week-long break that we are looking at adding if we were to go this route. This calendar also adds in those transition days at the trimester breaks that were not in the traditional calendar. So it keeps the quarter break as well as adds in the trimester break. So you have a few extra longer weekends that you're looking at. Again, Thanksgiving is maintained the full week, the 2 weeks for winter break in December and January. And then at the end of the year, you'll see that it still maintains a end of school year for students before Memorial Day weekend. So this is more similar to the traditional calendar. The earlier start allows for that week break in October. So limitations, again, our new educators would start in July, which would have that additional benefits cost to the district budget. And our returning educators do start earlier as well, so that summer is slightly shortened, as well as for our students starting a week earlier than they have been in the past few years. And it does not address the educator request for additional time off in that fourth quarter. So this still has just the 1 or 2 days in fourth quarter that is a break. Although there are some benefits, so that full week in October is something that folks have talked about, both families and educators have talked about. It does maintain the November break as well as winter break and keeps graduation before Memorial Day, so it's more similar to what people are used to. And it does add in, like I said, it sprinkles in those extra days throughout. So you have the trimester and the quarter breaks throughout the year, including an additional 3 days of work time and professional development. So our final calendar option that the committee has looked at is a 4-day calendar. Again, this maintains the same number of instructional days for students, but because it is only a 4-day week, again, we're extending the year. So it would start earlier and end later to make all of those instructional days fit with only attending 4 days a week. So one of the basics here of this calendar is that this would be a Monday off. We're looking at a 4-day week with Mondays off. It does keep our traditional breaks that we've had and sometimes extends them. Provides a monthly professional development day for staff. So that would be the first Monday of every month would be a day for our staff to come in. And that would not affect any of our student contact days. And one thing we did talk about, we spent some time with DAC talking about this as well, is that when there is a consistent Monday off, sometimes that is a benefit for families who are looking for childcare. So this adds that consistency in for those days. Here's what that calendar looks like, big picture. So we would have new teachers beginning July 17th, returning teachers coming back July 20th, and students starting the school year on Tuesday, July 25th. That begins our 4-day weeks, and then you can see that first Monday of the month is going to be that professional development day for staff. We still have the week off for Thanksgiving, the 2 weeks at winter break. And then again, the spring break would align with UNC and Ames in March. And then we would have a slight shift in April. We would switch to a 5-day schedule. So students would attend Monday through Friday during the assessment window. And then in May, switch back to the 4-day weeks, and students would finish June 6th. So this would start us July 25th with students and end June 6th. So again, that is a shorter summer. So you'll see some similar limitations and benefits. Starting in July affects the benefits cost. The shorter summer can again be a limitation and a benefit depending on how you look at it. There is less vacation time and or time for athletics and clubs and things like that over the summer with a shortened summer. It would require families to provide child care on Mondays throughout the school year. as well as for any families experiencing food insecurity, those Mondays would not have lunches provided. So that's something else to consider. We already talked about the benefits costs. And some of the pros to this calendar is that we would have, we've seen in other schools and districts that have looked at this, that student assessment has improved with a schedule like this. Again, we talked about that consistency in the schedule as well for families to know when the days off are going to be. You don't have random 4-day weeks. They're just all 4-day weeks. And then it does maintain the consistency of the 5-day weeks in April during the state assessment window. One benefit of having the shorter summer is that it may help to mitigate learning loss over that extended break. There is a potential that we would have some reduced costs in some areas of the district budget, and like we mentioned, the decreased summer slide, as well as just pointing out that 69% of the schools in Colorado are on this schedule. Now, I do want to clarify that's not 69% of students. That is 69% of schools. It's a lot of our small districts in Colorado have gone to a 4-day schedule. Our largest districts with the most students are still on more of a traditional calendar. The one exception to that is Brighton is on that 4-day schedule, and they are a large district in Colorado. Again, we have the consistency of the day off, which could provide an opportunity for our students and our staffs who have additional jobs to have an extended weekend. If they were working over the weekend, they would have Mondays as well to work at that second job. And we've heard a lot anecdotally from families who have attended schools with a 4-day schedule that it provides that day for them to do doctor's appointments and other things like that, where it doesn't require them to miss school, whether that is for work or education. They don't have to necessarily take time away from the school day for those type of appointments. This also maintains the start and end times of the day. So we're not talking about a longer day, Tuesday through Friday. We're just talking about the school year starting earlier and ending later. That was a lot of information in a very short amount of time.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. I should have set this up at the beginning for you all. This work was begun because of work we did in our teachers' negotiations process here a few years ago. Out of that negotiations came this committee called Time and Learning, where we were encouraged to put a team of folks together to really look at how we use time, including the calendar as well as the school day, and how that impacts learning and how that's impacting students and staff. And so that's why this work was started, as a result of that committee saying, let's go study this and see if there's another way to do this here in District 6. The other thing I will add, as you see that the numbers of districts that have gone to the 4-day week, most of them have done that by extending the actual day, not the calendar. As this proposal would be. Now, this 4-day week is similar to what is occurring at Frontier Academy. There's some similarities to that. There's some similarities to the 4-day week at university, although university starts the year with a 5-day week for several weeks before they move into that 4-day week. So with that, we'd like to open it up to the students and to hear what questions you have and initial reactions you might have.
Okay. My initial reaction was the one with the 4-day school. With the shorter summer is if we continue to do the internship programs that we do, that will give our students less time to do those, because I did it with the Greeley Dream Team and it was very much longer. And from what it looks like, is it 4 weeks off?
It is close to, yeah.
4 weeks, and that doesn't give a lot of time. And also, like with the Bestis, it's a longer process, and so that gives students less opportunities if you want to continue that program.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the balanced calendar. I think that was a great option, because even if you were trying to work into doing a 4-day, or if you got like positive feedback on those ones, you can start with the balanced calendar. I feel like that one's close to our traditional, but starts a change. And so you can work your way into a more drastic change if you start with the balanced calendar. A lot of my teachers are always like, October is the hardest month of the year. And so having that 1 week break, I think would be easier not only on our educators, but also on the students.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree with the balanced schedule because, again, the 1 week, and also there's a few days off in February, and I feel like, I don't know, as a student, February is pretty hard for me, and so like having a few days to get back on track, but like not every single Monday would be good for me, would be better for students. So, thank you.
And as well for the balanced calendar, it seemed really interesting to me, and I like the consistency of it with the 4 weeks and then a week off. Though something I noticed in the calendar was it during May, when school is ending, is there only 2 weeks left before school ends?
Yeah, there is a piece to that we need to spend a little bit more time on. This is just kind of that first look at that. There's actually 3.5, 4 weeks there if you're looking at this extended calendar. We do need to look at that. There is some AP and IB testing that happens that second week in May, so we may need to look at shifting that week a little bit. That's something that we've already thought about. But yes, that would, if we shifted it down, that would just give you 3 weeks between that week break and the end of the school year.
Okay. And would Memorial Day be a day off?
It would.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the questions.
I'm curious to hear from you guys what you don't like about some of the 4 proposals, and specifically I'd like to hear what you don't like about the 4-day week.
For the 4-day week, I think while the argument of learning loss during summer is very important, also that time, though, for students to have some relaxation and, like Tommy said, internships and possible just other educational endeavors are important. So for me, it's just the smaller summer on the 4-day week calendar. But apart from that, I think it's all good. It's all great. I like it.
I also kind of agree with the shorter summer thing. I think all year long you're really sometimes stressed out with like things, and it can really pile up, and having that summer to look forward to is really nice to just take that time, and only knowing that I'd have like 3 weeks of a summer. And it's so hot in Colorado that it's hard to concentrate with the heat, and it's just I think we need our summers to stay with a good proportion to the year.
In addition to that, I believe the one Monday off like every couple weeks is better than every Monday off, because for me it feels like an reward for me to take a little break after like 10 days of like working. So I don't think like every single Monday off would be as productive as like, I mean, not for me but like for some students. So.
Well, I have to look this as a bigger picture for my little siblings, as I will be moving on. As much as I would like to have every Monday off, all Mondays off, I don't think that will be beneficial. I like every other Monday. I think that would be true. Like, I enjoy, like right now, the late start Mondays. I really enjoy those because it gets me going started in case I have something to do early in the morning that I forgot to do over the weekend. So I think that we can count a bill.
Sort of what Reagan said earlier about the points of summer is that I think why the balanced calendar seems so interesting is because it also still keeps that sort of long summer, not as long, but still something like worthy like to look forward to. Mm-hmm. So I'm really liking the balanced calendar.
So I'm curious, if this were to change and we were to lengthen the day slightly, to where students weren't coming back to school until August. So if you didn't have to come back in July, does that make that more interesting to you? Julie's saying no.
I'd say no, just because we actually got a little bit of feedback from our student council today, but a lot of people disagree with longer days because it's not enough time for homework, and it just kind of adds to the stress, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think along like the schedule we have right now is really pretty long, so like I wouldn't want to either stay later or come in earlier. So I think like adding more time to the day wouldn't be as beneficial.
I agree with that because a lot of us play sports, and so that would at least benefit us if we had a game all the way in Denver and then we had to leave early, but there's still school, so we're missing more time instead of less time than usual. And then also if activities are planned, then that is also accountable. And also if you're in a play or musical, we tend to go long in those days, like at least like from usually 7 to 10, and so if you extend it longer, you get less hours to do your work, and then you have to do more work on top of that.
Guys, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you clearly. It sounds like most of you prefer the balanced calendar, but is that opposed to the two other changes, or just do you prefer the balanced calendar to the traditional calendar that we have now?
We put them both up again for them to see them. I think the biggest difference is you start just a little bit earlier in the balanced calendar, right?
But you get
But
the
you have that fall
October-
break,
you
that
get that
fall
October
break.
week.
Yeah.
You get the extra October week
Yeah.
and extra days off in February.
I think the October week is kind of worth it. It doesn't, starting in August makes you feel like you have a really good amount of summer. And so either way, starting at like the beginning, as long as we're starting in August, but having just a little bit earlier in August, but having that whole week in October, I think is really beneficial.
And I just want to ask, what are the limitations again on the balanced calendar?
Oops. So we have a July start date for our educators, which affects our budget. And then.
So let me explain that
Yeah.
to you guys. So what if you start in July, we have to pay benefits for those employees for an additional, that additional month. Whereas now, we don't start benefits until the next month. Because they don't start till the next month.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, and so I think we looked at it, and we're talking about $200,000, I think, to the budget. Megan's nodding. Okay, good.
And to be clear, guys, that sounds like a big number, but that's not a big number in the District 6 budget. but it is dollars. There's still some additional work and additional cost. And I mean, there's all that onboarding of new employees that we don't have on here that I think would be a limitation. That it means we're onboarding new employees sooner and getting the system switched over from one fiscal year to the next fiscal year as well.
Well, to add on to that, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the new benefits would attract educators, right?
Right.
So like it would also retain them. So it might
Sure
be.
might, Julie.
Okay.
That sure might.
Did that answer your question? Sure.
Then what kind of impact could that $200,000 have, if that could be possibly answered by chance?
So to give you an idea, this is probably an easy way for you to understand. $200,000 is like 2 teachers. So if you look at our total staff of how many teachers, Megan, do we have? 1,750, 2,200, what? 1,100, depending on. So that's equivalent to about 2 teachers.
If that money went towards the educators starting in July, would that reduce the funds that are going towards like programs like concurrent enrollment and things like that?
Probably not significantly, Reagan. I mean, it, again, 200,000 is, I mean, it's money, but it's not money that's going to close a program.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And nobody liked 4 weeks on, 1 week off? No votes for that.
Well, I wouldn't mind it, but also we got to think of some of our, I forget what you guys call them, but they're not teachers and they don't get a regular salary. They like punch in hourly, and so that like affects their salary as well if they have no Monday and then they get less money than the teachers do, and that's like really unfair. Like
Thanks for thinking about our support staff.
Support staff like librarians, custodians, all those secretaries.
Is that a consideration, Ms. Green? I mean, what you're saying, because I'm looking at that, like they will start earlier. I mean,
It's something that we have talked about, and it depends. It's one of those things, it could be a benefit, it could not. So it would be the same number of days throughout the course of the year. Any of these options would be the same number of days that they would work. And so for the staff that are then not working in the summer, they're not being paid in the summer. So a shorter summer could be a benefit because you're spreading out the pay more throughout the school year. Now, we also have to consider that a number of those staff members work a second job over the summer, and so shortening the summer would shorten the amount of time that they would have at that position. Or we mentioned that Mondays could be an additional day if you're working an extra job. You know, you'd have a 3-day weekend to work a second position. Some people might find that a benefit, some people might not. And so it really could go either way. Over the course of the year, it is not affecting the pay of our support staff from District 6, but it might affect the pay that they receive from alternate employment.
and do we have an idea of what percentage of our staff have alternate employment?
We don't really.
No, just anecdotally. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that some of the alternate employment is our own staff working for us in summer school programs, or working for us in Saturday school, or working for us in after-school programs. And so in the one calendar where you have the week off, that those could be learning enrichment times, that would likely be our staff who would be coming back to work during that time. And we would need support staff there as well as or licensed staff there.
Good question.
Thank you.
I think it's interesting to think about what the extended access calendar would do, like to the, and I don't mean do to it, but would if the effects of the community, like our pools are open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, but if there's no kids for the month of August because they're in school, like that, I don't know, it's just kind of fascinating, like, I don't know, even tourism or leisure activities. It'd just be interesting to see how that affects.
It's a big shift if we were to do something like that. And just to be clear, the more dramatic changes, we know that those would not be changes for this next fall. That's going to take us another year or two if we were to want to implement something more dramatic that's going to have an impact on the entire community.
And I was just curious because I know that this work was presented to us last year as well, I believe, like an extended year. And so I was just curious, like, are we going to kind of revisit this every year? Has there been more concern that a big change is needed, or?
Well, I think what came out of last year, Ms. Mash, is that they really had just looked at the 4-day week last year. And I think that there was agreement among the committee, and I think most of us, that the 4-day week really wasn't appropriate for District 6. And so we asked them to go back and do some more work, and we worked with a consultant at MindSpark to help us to do that work. So we asked them to go back and do some more work and go a little deeper and explore what else is out there in the country and what's having the greatest impact on, the two things are student achievement and teacher attraction and retention. I mean, those are the big pieces when we look at a calendar and how we utilize the instructional day and the time during the day.
Yeah, I know right now we want to hear from you guys and that we're going to have time on Friday. But with the 4 weeks on, 1 week off, or 4 to 5 weeks on, 1 week off, the extended access calendar, like I was just thinking, families, right, often rely on schools for childcare and meals, some families. So in my head, I'm like, I think a lot of families would opt to put their kids in these extended learning opportunities just for the childcare and that benefit. And then would we have enough staffing in that week to take care of a bunch of kids whose parents don't want them to be out of school for, financial reasons because the parents are working? So
those are really good questions, and I think until we ask our staff, if we were interested in that, that would be the work we would do over the next year to 18 months if we wanted to move in that direction. Is what is the impact on the community, and do we have the staff to do the work, and what does that look like? Yeah. And we'd want to work with our community partners, Boys and Girls Club and other partners that we have here in the community, ABC, to look at childcare and some of those pieces. We do, food is a big piece of this. There's no question about that. If students are not unlike summer school, so right now in summer school, we can universally feed because we're running a summer school program. So we can have sites where food is provided for families who are not even in summer school. If you go to a calendar like one of these where you have these breaks off in between, that is not considered summer school, and so we cannot feed children at no cost to the district. We wouldn't receive reimbursement from the federal government to do that. And so if we wanted to feed children during those weeks off, when you have a week at a time, that would be an additional cost to the district. And that cost is far more significant than the $200,000 it is. Yeah.
And that would be true on Mondays also.
Yeah, and that's true on the Mondays as well, as Ms. Crane just whispered in my ear.
One thing I noticed, my boys are on 4 days at university, and the one thing I didn't really recognize until it happened was sports still go 5 days a week. So then you don't have a bus system, and you end up making an extra trip to school at 3 p.m. to do sports practices, just like they would have if they were already there. So that's been a strain on. I ran them to sports on my way here, and I had to find them a ride for them to get home. So it was just something that kind of caught me off guard, switching to a 4-day week this year.
Can you remind me what groups we're taking the calendar options to?
Yeah. Yes, so we have already gone to the district accountability, which is primarily parents and a few community members. And then I go tomorrow to our Teachers Advisory Council, to present to that group, which is a teacher from most every building in the district. Ms. Snyder has worked with her executive board for the Greeley Education Association and gathered their input and their voice in all of this. I asked if she wanted us to come and meet with them, and she feels like she's got that covered pretty well. We have not yet presented this to our district leadership team in its entirety, so we'll need, we'll want to get input from our district leadership team as well. And then if it looks like we're serious about one or two of these after we hear from you all, then we're going to need to do some broader listing, I think, with some community meetings and inviting community in to give us feedback, and then possibly a survey.
And maybe would there be the option for getting a larger, a broader student perspective?
Oh,
I know
sure,
we have
yeah.
a great perspective
Yeah,
here,
we can go, well, yeah, and we could go to the whole council. I think at just about any meeting, you all would open it up to us to do that, right? Yeah.
And that is true that we have done that in years past when we have a proposal for the following year. This is obviously a little bit different, but.
Yeah, we would typically go to you all and your whole council, but we know you wanted to come in and do some work directly with us and with the board, so we invited you this way.
I would just like to note that this is probably the topic I get the most input from the community on outside of other things, and it's always summer's too short. Summer's too short. We're tired of our summer creeping in. So it's usually parents wanting to do more with their kids. And I had a lady maybe this morning at the gym tell me, she's like, I'd rather go from Memorial Day to Labor Day and then cram everything else in. But it says like the calendar is the biggest topic I get in contact with.
Yeah, it's a big deal to people. Anything else you guys are thinking about or wondering about around this?
So just to clarify, if we were to move into like any of these different calendar ideas, we would have to try, like you guys would work with the community in order to accommodate like everyone and for it to work as smoothly as it can be.
Absolutely, and we'd be asking you all for advice on doing that. what is the work we would need to do with students. Ultimately, the decision will be the Board of Education. So we'll come with a recommendation at some point and later this spring, and then the board will take action on that recommendation. And it could be, we've talked about maybe it's a phased-in approach. If there's a calendar we want to work toward, but we want to make some tweaks here on the front end with the balanced calendar, I think it was, or something. I mean, that's not completely out of the question either, I don't think.
Guys, I know Reagan answered my question. I'm not sure if I heard from everybody, though. Of the balanced and traditional, do you prefer the balanced or traditional, Tommy?
Oh. Well, I don't know. It's a hard decision. I like both. What I just really want is, especially for high schoolers, we have endless amounts of no sleep. I can just say that I have no sleep. I just want a day to relax. Whoa, went loud. I just want something like relaxing. That's what to chill, because high schoolers do so much just getting ready for college, but also want to show off and also to show that adults that we can do stuff. And so not losing sleep is part of high school. I gotta say that. If you had a leather jacket, that means you have lost sleep.
I concur. Jilly?
The question was
Balanced or traditional?
I
What was
would
your preference?
prefer the balanced, because I also agree with the week off in October would be beneficial, not only for staff who need a break, but also for students. It's kind of like it's a fall break, so I think that would be really beneficial.
Okay. I don't know, I heard from you, Reagan, but Richard?
Just thinking more and more about it, I'm really liking the idea of a balanced school calendar. Just like the name itself, balance. It's the week offs, and I really like how, as short-ish the summer may seem, it's still a good length that I'm very satisfied with it. So I think I prefer the balanced calendar as well.
Thank you, guys. Do you guys have any other questions or comments for us? Tommy, we'll try to figure out a way for high schoolers to get more sleep.
It's more of a rest, like rejuvenation. Is there a goal?
And I'll just point out some of that's on the high schoolers as well.
Well, you provide so much for us, and now you want to do everything.
May I say one thing about internship program?
Yes, ma'am.
Quickly.
Of course.
So I appreciate that you would worry about internship in the summer. Over time, our goal is to really have internship not be an event that just occurs in the summer, but that you would have internship opportunities throughout your school year as well as in the summer. So that's where we'd like to get to eventually. But we were really building the program and really built it up nicely there for about 3 years, and then the pandemic hit, and we really couldn't do much for internships for those couple of summers, and now we're rebuilding again. But over time, we'd like internship to be a year-long experience or a semester-long experience as much as a summer experience. We'll see if we can get there, but that would be our hope over time.
I love that.
Do you guys have anything else for us, or board members, do you have any other questions for students? Because if not, Dr. Pilch, do we have anything else on this presentation, or can we wrap up?
I think we can wrap
All right.
up.
Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for your input. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, you guys. You
Thank
can
you, Ms.
grab
Crane.
some dinner if you'd like.
We'll move on to our budget year revisions.
And I thought, Mr. Matthews, that you all were maybe going to grab dinner, and while Ms. Sponsor presents,
Oh,
you
yes.
all would eat dinner,
That's
and
right.
then that would give us some time to dig into budget.
And we were
Sounds
hoping
good.
that the students would stay and eat with us, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what we were hopeful.
Well, we'll take a quick break and grab our
Yes.
dinner before we bring the sponsor up.
No.
Ready? You need 15 seconds?
George is out sick. Did you all hear that? It all melted though.
Well, I think we're ready to go. So, Ms. Sullivan, are you still with us? Okay. All right. Well, we'll get back to our meeting. It's 5:08, and so we're a little bit behind schedule, but we should be able to make that up, I think. So we're to our budget year revisions, and I see Ms. Sponsler's joined us at the table. So I'll give this to you, Dr. Pilch, to introduce, and I'm sure we'll hear from Ms. Sponsler.
I'm happy to introduce our Chief Financial Officer, Megan Sponsler, to bring you up to speed, and she'll walk you through a little bit about why you have this item this time of year, and what the board's role is with that, and give you an update. And then we wanted to take you to the website again and just show you where you can find this information on a, real-time basis.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Pilch, and good evening, members of the board. It is January, so it does mean that it's revised budget time. So Colorado law is pretty specific in how school districts manage their budgets and how often and at what point in time you can actually revise your budget. So in January, we have until the end of January per state law to revise our budgets, and it's always something that needs to happen. Usually we're not too far off, but occasionally we need to make some adjustments, and some of those reasons might be because we actually have our October count information. Back in May and June when we're presenting the budget, it's all based on our best guess and best information we have at that point in time. But now we actually know what our October count information was. We know the teachers that we have hired. Back in May and June, we had an idea of what the staffing would look like, but when you look at our teacher salary schedule, you can see that our entry teacher wage is about $42,000, but if we hired someone with experience, it might be $62,000 or $72,000. So, I kind of budget based on past history and an average of what our new teachers are making, but now we can actually reconcile all of that and reflect the staff that we have actually hired. So the budget document that is in your packet, what I have done is I have taken each of our funds, and if you're not familiar with governmental accounting, one way that I like to think about it is each of our fund is like a separate checkbook, and so each of our funds checkbook has to balance and is used for a very specific purpose. So each of the funds, I've laid out the audited information from the past, the adopted budget that was approved back in June, and then the revised budget. Any changes that are significant, I have identified and kind of footnoted at the bottom of the page what those big changes are. It's difficult to take 40,000 line items and distill it into something that is understandable. So I've done my best here to try to create the best explanations I can for all of these changes. On our general operating fund, that is probably the fund with the biggest changes and is the one that is most often changed during the revision process. And that's simply because that's the fund that we have most control over. That's the fund that you all can identify as priorities, that we want to spend our money in certain places. And so that's the fund that is impacted by our October count and our per pupil funding and all of those things. Overall, we really are just reconciling our per pupil count and our salaries and benefits. Those are most of the changes in this budget. There are a few things that I will point out. First of all, our pupil count. There was an article in the Greeley Tribune over the weekend
about our pupil count, and while we are up over last year in terms of our pupil count, we still fell below our budgeted projection. So we just needed to reconcile that a little bit to come back in line. We are one of the few districts and counties in the state that is actually seeing growth in their student counts. Many districts and counties are seeing declines, and some are very significant declines. We are fortunate that we are not there, but I do think as we are seeing, growth will continue to kind of slow down over the next few years. So going forward, we'll just be budgeting more conservatively for student count. We also are planning to purchase some property, and we'll be talking about that more in the future. But we had initially budgeted that in our capital projects fund. We've since moved that into the general fund just because that's where the budgeting works out best. So that is a change that you'll see in our general operating fund. In addition, we have been very fortunate that we've received some oil and gas revenue. So I've looked at what we have received to date so far and adjusted what I think we might continue to get through the second half of the year. So those are the main changes to our revenue source at this point. And then our expenses, as I've said, salaries, benefits. Another big one that we've needed to make some changes to, utilities. And if you're like at my house, you open your electric bill, it's a little bit of a shock. So we are not immune from that. We are experiencing the same increases with utility costs. So I have made some adjustments there. And then the other big thing that happened this year, supply chains are catching up, but things are still kind of slow. And so we had some projects that we had planned to work on last fiscal year, through the mill levy override dollars, but those expenses didn't hit until this fiscal year. So that money is, still sitting there from last year, so it rolled over, and now we've actually incurred those expenses, so I needed to adjust the budget to account for those expenses. A big one there are some HVAC projects that we're doing in conjunction with the bond. So we are kind of matching some expenses with bond money and some grant money and our MLO money to maximize the projects that we can accomplish. So we've got some of those projects. We've got some roof projects that are kind of ongoing. We also had some buses that we ordered a long time ago, and we thought that, a year's time would be plenty of time, but it turns out that is not true. So buses that we have ordered a long time ago are finally starting to come in and be delivered. So that budget, was in the prior year. It is now going to hit in this fiscal year. And then the last big item there are the curriculum materials that we ordered last spring. Those materials were ordered, you adopted that curriculum, but the invoices didn't actually come until this fiscal year. So we needed to adjust for that. That was about $3.3 million. So all of those things together, it's about $8.2 million in mill levy money that we didn't spend last year that we planned to spend that we're now spending this year. So any questions about that? All right. Then I'm going to skip over some other things. A lot of these funds really don't have big changes, so I'm not going to talk about them, but if you have questions, you can certainly let me know. The preschool program fund, that is one that I want to talk about. What page are you on? I am on page 8 of those budget statements. And as you probably know, the Colorado preschool program is going away, and it is being replaced by the universal preschool program. So the funding mechanism for universal preschool is totally different than the Colorado preschool program. So this fund is a fund that has been in existence for 20 plus years, and it is time to start sunsetting this fund. So CDE has advised us to try to spend down this fund balance as best we can this fiscal year. The guidance that we have been given is to use these funds to help support preschool and the launch of universal preschool. So that is what we are doing. You have been out to Meeker, you have seen the addition there. So we are using some of these funds to purchase the preschool playground out at Meeker to help offset some of the bond costs for that project. We also have some curriculum needs that we need to purchase additional curriculum materials for preschool. So we'll be spending some of that fund balance for those materials. And then we've also, this has been kind of an unusual year, we have a significant increase in enrollment in preschool. And so we've needed to open some additional preschool classrooms. And so some of that staff is being paid for out of these funds. So any questions about preschool? I'll just briefly talk about nutrition since Danielle is here. She can correct me if I get anything wrong. We have kind of shifted how the revenue looks. You know, initially we had planned to transfer money from the general fund into the nutrition fund. When the board voted to support paying for meals for all students, that needed to look a little bit different, so that now is no longer a transfer, it is part of the local revenue that comes into the fund. So that's why you see a pretty significant increase there. Federal revenue is also increased, and that's because we have higher than anticipated participation, which is great. More kids are eating. At the same time, you can see in the expense row there that the cost for food service operations has also increased significantly. That's because we've had to increase wages for our staff just to try to recruit people into the district to work. And then the cost of food has also continued to increase. So we have additional revenue coming in, but we also have additional expenses.
It's almost a wash.
Yes, it is almost a wash. And I think that is all of the highlights that I would point out, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Ms. Sponsor, could you talk a little bit about bond and how bond dollars are reflected in the budget, and then how that, I mean, the bond dollars make the budget look far more significant than what it is. So could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So the bond dollars fall into what we call the building fund, and that is on page 15. And you can see that we have budgeted $220 million. It's really difficult to try to figure out exactly how much of that is going to be incurred this fiscal year compared to maybe next fiscal year. So I purposely budgeted a little bit high just to make sure that we have adequate money there to cover those expenses. But as you know, that money doesn't get replenished. Once you spend it, it's gone. And so we're getting close to that point where we're going to start seeing those dollars go down and start dwindling down to nothing. So we have issued all of the bonds that we could issue based on that ballot question. And so now we're at the point where we're spending the money, and then as those projects are completed, this fund will eventually go away. So does that help? Any other questions about that?
What is the date that all of those bond dollars, is there a date that they have to be spent?
No, there's really not a date that we have to spend it all. There's kind of a milestone in that you needed to spend about, or have a plan, I guess is the way the law is written, to spend 90% of the proceeds in 5 years. I don't think that's going to be a problem for us. So what they don't want is for you to just get the money and then sit on the money and not use it for the intended purpose.
Guys, are there any other questions from Ms. Sponsler or anything, Ms. Sponsler, you can think we should have asked, but maybe haven't?
And did you already show where we can see this on the website?
Not yet. I will do that next.
Thank you, Ms. Peps.
So when you go to our district website, there is a little quick link down here for financial transparency. And here we have a lot of information posted. Much of this information is required by state law, that it is posted in a certain way. But we have also chosen as a district to post a lot of additional information so that it's available if people want to look at it. So the first thing that we just covered are the adopted budget and revised budget. Once that's been approved, will be here. The financial audit, I'll just click on that so you can see it. So you can see that we have our financial audits all posted here. Technically, we're supposed to have 3 years, but we have just decided to post everything. Salary schedules or policies about how people are paid are linked in here. This financial data file is something that I think most people would look at and go, what in the world is that? This is really for CDE's purpose. They have a statewide transparency website, and so they take the data that is in this file and they kind of suck it up into their system so that they can populate the statewide system. Most people would look at it and say it's meaningless. So just ignore that little link there. If you had waivers from any state statutes, we need to post those there. We do not. If we had our own 990 nonprofit designation, then we would post that information. Our plan for distributing mill levy revenue to charter schools, we just pass that along on a per pupil basis, so that one is pretty straightforward. Here's where we have a lot of other information though. So we have the quarterly financial statements. These are the statements that you all see as board members on the consent agenda typically. Then we have our investment performance reports. You also see that as part of your consent agenda. The accounts payable check registers, and then our purchasing card check registers. If you wanted to look at that information, we post all of that. And the way this is read is our fund. So Fund 10, for example, is our general operating fund. We have the check number, who it was paid to, and the amount. Fund 21 is our nutrition fund. And so American Produce, we paid $66,000 to them. Fund 22 is our grant fund, and so you can see some of the contracts that we have paid at our grant funds. So just like your check register, that's what we have posted here. And then really our charter school reports here just link directly to the charters. So each charter school is also required to post their information for their school online. We've been working with them to make sure everything is current, because if they're out of compliance, we are also out of compliance. So we've been working on that. Any questions about that information? it's easy to kind of go down some rabbit trails on that.
You could spend a lot of time on our website.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Ms. Sponsler? For Dr. Pilch on this update, and we will have this in our business meeting as an action item for us to vote on. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Sponsler.
Thank you.
We are now to our debrief of the work session. So, Ms. Mash, we'll start with you.
I always love to hear from the students. I love their ideas, the things that are important to them, and so they're the ones that this is about and would have to do the schedule if we were to change the calendar. So I really appreciate having all their input. And thank you for helping us to weed through some of the changes to the budget, Ms. Sponsler. And I appreciate the walkthrough on the website as well, because I have told people that all of our financial statements are on our website, but now I could actually help someone find those. So.
Mr. Bentley?
Yeah, same. Excited to kind of get back in the schools and back to normal school board work. The break and the holidays kind of got me out of the loop a little bit. So excited for all the fun events coming up and great to hear from the kids. So,
Dr. Campos-Spitzy?
Yeah. I'm really grateful for Megan breaking down that pretty intimidating document for us. She made it like super clear, which I was appreciative of. And then, I love to hear from the students. I feel like we have this grown-up adult working life perspective, and then hearing the students who really love their long summers is really refreshing to get their perspective on these calendar changes. So, excited for the work session or the executive meeting later on.
Ms. Pappas?
I too appreciated the calendar information from Christina, and I know that the committee has been working quite a while. I don't know how long, but has been working to try to bring us these options. So I look forward to more discussion on Friday. And then, the budget. I think we all should just be so grateful to have Megan as our Chief Financial Officer. I think she's just amazing, and the transparency and all of the work she does to make it comprehensible to us. I really appreciate that. And of course, it's always so great to hear from our leaders and from our students. It does make me feel a little humble, just because they're so thoughtful and insightful, and that wouldn't have been the case for me as a high school senior. So I really appreciate that from them. Thank you.
And ditto. Thank you to Ms. Sponsler, Ms. Crane. Thank you for putting that presentation together. It's always good to see you here again, and I appreciate having the students here.
Mrs. Holden.
Oh, Ms. Solomon, I'm sorry.
She is on still.
We'll let her go last today, but just thank you for bringing the students in. I'm not sure we've had such in-depth student input on a matter this big before, so that was great. So thank you for bringing them in, Dr. Pilch.
I think they'd like to do more of that.
Yeah?
They would. So if there's other topics, I know they would like to do more of that.
It's great to get to hear from them, and makes that group very valuable to us. And so that's all I have to say, Ms. Sullivan. I'm sorry I skipped you there.
Sorry, it took a second there. No, I actually appreciated hearing from the students, and I'm actually surprised that they didn't jump on the 4-day work week. And I think when it's affecting their calendar year, to see that they don't like much of a change, because that balanced calendar does definitely reflect more of the traditional school year. I think we need to kind of listen to their voices and keep that in mind, because that's their education, and they're the ones that benefit from being heard from, I guess, for the calendar. I think we really need to recognize their input. That's about all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Well, that's all we have for our work session, and our work session is adjourned. You can join us again at 6 o'clock for a business meeting.